All right, everybody, welcome back to the PMP Mastery Guide.
Yeah, welcome back.
We love to do these deep dives into some of the trickier topics and questions that come up
Right.
as you're studying for your PMP exam. And
Yeah.
today's no different. We're tackling a question that comes up quite a bit as you're getting into the Agile world, and that is, do Agile projects even need a project charter?
It's a good question.
It's a good question, right?
Yeah, it really is. And it kind of highlights this difference in mindset, right? You got Agile, which is really emphasizing speed, minimal documentation.
Right.
And then you got those traditional frameworks like the PMBOK guide that we talk about a lot on this channel, where that project charter is really seen as kind of step one.
Right, yeah. It's seen as that formal document that kicks everything off. So let's throw a scenario at you.
Okay.
Imagine a well-funded startup.
Okay.
They got this idea for a killer new mobile app. They're ready to code monies. Their vision seems clear. Do you, as the project, lead pause to create a formal project charter? Or do you just assume that shared enthusiasm and funding means you could dive right in?
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think our listeners should do?
I don't know. I mean, I'm tempted to just say dive in.
Right.
But I know better than that.
Right. Well, to really get a handle on this, I think it helps to kind of look at how traditional project management views the charter.
Okay.
What's its main purpose, according to that PMBOK guide?
Well, in the PMBO guide, the project charter is really the document that officially authorizes the project or phase.
Yeah, that official go.
That official go, right?
Yeah.
That's the kickoff. And very importantly, it's also what gives the project manager the authority to allocate those resources.
Right. So it's not just like hey, we like your idea, go do it. It's
Okay,
like here's the team you can use. Here's the budget.
Here's a budget you could use.
Here's, the tools and stuff.
Right. And even in Agile, I mean, you need that formal, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
You need that authority to start using that budget and getting those people involved.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key point that sometimes gets missed. Even in Agile, you still have to operate within a certain, organizational structure.
Yeah, right.
And that charter is what gives you that legitimacy.
That permission slip.
Yeah, exactly. It empowers the project manager from the get-go.
Right.
Now, contrast that with how people tend to think about Agile.
Okay.
What's the general feeling about documentation in the Agile community?
Well, there's often this perception that Agile is all about being, really fast and flexible.
Right.
And that documentation kind of gets in the way. And, we know from the Agile Manifesto, working software over comprehensive documentation.
Exactly.
So that leads to the impression that maybe Agile teams should aim to be as paper-free as possible.
Yeah, and it's important to clarify that, Agile definitely values that working software, but the idea that it's literally paper-free, I think, is a bit of a misconception.
Right.
The key Agile principle is just enough documentation.
Right? Just what you need.
Yeah, having the right level of information to support the team, the stakeholders, without, creating unnecessary work.
Right.
And this is where I think a project charter, if it's done in a concise way, can actually be really valuable in an Agile context.
Yeah, so let's talk about that value a little bit.
Okay.
What are some of the specific benefits of actually having a project charter, even a short one, when you're using Agile methods?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones, even when that overall goal seems really obvious, a concise charter really helps get everyone, all the stakeholders, truly on the same page about what that goal is.
Right.
It's amazing how often, different people interpret the same kind of general idea in slightly different ways.
Yeah.
So that charter, even a one-pager, acts as a single source of truth, for that vision.
That alignment piece is so important.
Yeah, it helps to solidify that common ground, and I think that's really critical.
Right. And reduces the risk of, going down the wrong path later on.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one big one. What's another plus?
Another one is onboarding. So think about when new team members join an Agile project, or maybe you've got executives who aren't involved in the day-to-day work,
Right.
but they need to quickly understand what the project's all about. A clear and concise project charter can bring them up to speed really efficiently.
Yeah, it gives them that high-level view without having to dig through all the backlogs and sprint plans.
Exactly. It's that quick elevator pitch for the project.
Yeah, I love that, the elevator pitch
So
for the whole project. Yeah, that's great.
So it's really valuable for that.
Okay. And we touched on resources earlier when we were talking about the PMBOK guide. How does a charter help with resource allocation in an Agile setting?
Yeah, even in self-organizing agile teams, there still needs to be clarity on what resources are dedicated to this particular product or effort,
Right.
both people and budget.
Right.
And the charter can formally acknowledge that allocation. It provides a clear mandate for the team to use those resources to achieve those agreed upon goals.
It was that acknowledgement that, we've set aside these resources.
Right.
This is what you have to work with.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the advantages. Let's flip it around.
Yeah.
What are the potential downsides or risks of skipping a project charter when you're doing Agile?
Well, the risks can be pretty big, especially when you're not working in complete isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're dealing with external stakeholders,
Right.
clients, vendors, other departments within a larger organization,
Mm-hmm.
not having that formal document that outlines the project's funding, its objectives.
Right.
Who has the authority to make decisions?
Yeah, that decision-making piece is so important.
Oh, it's crucial.
Yeah.
It can lead to so much confusion down the line and even conflict.
Right, because if you don't know who has the authority.
Exactly. Imagine a situation where a critical decision needs to be made, but there's no clear record of who has the final say.
Ugh. Yeah, I can see how that would just bring things to a screeching halt.
Oh, absolutely. It can really stall progress.
Yeah.
I've actually seen a project I was working on once get delayed for weeks because two different stakeholders thought they had the final say on a key feature.
Oh, gosh.
And a simple charter outlining that decision-making process would have prevented that whole mess.
Yeah, just that clarity up front.
Yeah,
So it sounds like the context of the project really matters here.
it does.
Meaning there's no, always or never answer about needing a charter in Agile.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all here.
Okay.
The best approach is to be pragmatic about it
Mm-hmm.
and tailor the level of detail in your charter to that specific project and the organization that it's operating in.
Right.
What works for a small, self-contained startup might not be enough for a large corporation with a lot of, strict governance requirements.
Right. So it's not about blindly following a template.
No.
It's about really thinking about, okay, what information needs to be captured here?
Exactly.
To make this work, and you mentioned the level of detail, can an Agile project charter vary in length and complexity?
Absolutely. An Agile Project Charter doesn't have to be this massive multi-page document.
Right.
It could be a single-page overview that just captures the core essence of the project.
Yeah.
Or it could be slightly more detailed if the complexity or the organizational needs demand it.
Right.
The key is to keep it concise and focused on providing actual value.
So we're scaling the charter
Yeah, you're scaling it to fit the needs
to fit the need.
of the project.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if we're aiming for this Agile-friendly charter,
Okay.
what are some of those essential elements that should be included?
At a minimum, I would say it should clearly define the project goals.
Right. What are we trying to do here?
And what are we actually trying to achieve?
Okay.
It should outline the scope, at least at a high level, just to set those boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've talked about, it's crucial to establish who has that authority to make decisions and allocate resources. Those are the foundational elements that really provide clarity and alignment.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
You have.
Can we do a real quick recap of the main takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first off, project charters, even in Agile, serve the fundamental purpose of establishing formal authorization for the project.
That permission slip.
That permission slip, right?
Okay.
Second, they provide essential clarity on the project's objectives, and they help to align all the key stakeholders around a common understanding of what you're trying to achieve.
Right. We talked about that shared vision.
That shared vision, exactly.
Okay.
Third, and this is super important for Agile practitioners,
Yeah.
charters can and should be adapted, scaled to fit the needs of your Agile environment.
So we can tailor it.
Yeah, you
Right.
don't need to create this huge, cumbersome document.
Okay.
And finally, remember, Agile prioritizes value-added documentation,
Mm-hmm.
and a concise, well-crafted project charter can actually provide significant value by ensuring clarity, alignment, and that formal authorization without hindering agility.
Right. So it's finding that balance.
Yeah, finding that sweet spot.
That sweet spot. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So for all of you in our PMP Mastery Guide,
Yes.
the key takeaway here is really understanding why a project charter exists and how that purpose can still be served effectively, even within, the flexibility of Agile. It's not about blindly following a traditional process. It's like thoughtfully applying those principles to make sure your project has a really strong foundation right from the start.
Exactly. And, as you continue on your PMP mastery journey,
Yes.
keep in mind that understanding how these different approaches can coexist and even complement each other is a really important aspect of being an effective project manager.
It is. It's all about having those tools in your tool belt and knowing when to use them.
Yeah, exactly.
As you're thinking about your own Agile projects, we encourage you to consider what is the right size project charter that could benefit your team. By maintaining that focus and alignment without, causing those unnecessary delays, what's that absolute minimum amount of formalization that would actually add value to your specific situation?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is. It's something to think about as you're approaching each new project.
Yeah, thinking about that bare minimum information needed to ensure project success in your specific context, while balancing that formal documentation with agile flexibility is a really valuable exercise.
Absolutely. And for all of you who are part of our PMP Mastery Guide community,
Yes.
if you found this deep dive helpful on your journey towards PMP Mastery, please do give us a like and subscribe to the channel for more insights into navigating all these complexities of project management.
Yes, please do.
We're here to support you every step of the way.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for tuning in today.
Thanks, everyone.